Hello guys, this is your friend Multiverse Shinobi 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. What if Naruto became the Shadow King _1? The Eyes of the God. The night Uzumaki Naruto was born, the sky above the Hidden Leaf village did not just witness the fury of the nine-tailed demon fox. It witnessed the birth of something far more ancient, something that transcended the concepts of shinobi, chakra, and even the Sage of Six Paths. Inside the secret birthing chamber, the air was thick with the scent of blood, iron, and burning chakra. Minato Namikaze, the fourth Hokage, gasped for breath as he desperately held the seal binding the Kyuubi. Kushina lay exhausted, her life force fading. But as the newborn let out his very first cry, the chaotic, roaring chakra of the nine tails suddenly froze. It wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the silence of absolute terror. Minato looked down at his newborn son, his heart hammering against his ribs. The baby's eyes were open. They were not the soft blue of his own, nor the deep ocean hue of Kushina's. They were crimson. A ripple of concentric circles spread across the blood-red irises, and patterned neatly along those rings were 9 dark, distinct tomo. It was the legendary Rinne Sharingan, the eye that had once belonged only to the progenitor of chakra, the precursor to all creation and destiny. Akshin. Minato. Kushina whispered, her voice trembling not from her impending death, but from the overwhelming, godlike aura radiating from her infant son. His eyes. Before Minato could comprehend what he was looking at, the space in the center of the room began to distort, spirally. Inward like a vortex. A masked man emerged from the void, his lone Sharingan gleaming with malice. Obito Uchiha had come to rip the nine tails from its Jinchuriki. But the moment Obito's gaze fell upon the newborn baby, he froze. The mask could not hide the sudden, violent shudder that went through his entire body. His Sharingan spun rapidly, trying to process the visual prowess radiating from the cradle. This is impossible, Obito muttered, his voice cracking with a mixture of awe and sheer dread. The eye of the Shinju, in a newborn brat. The infant Naruto, still crying, instinctively blinked. As his Rinne Sharingan flared, the space around Obito completely shattered. The masked man didn't even have time to activate his Kamui. A microscopic distortion in gravity slammed into Obito's chest, throwing him violently across the cave, crashing through solid rock. Minato capitalized on the distraction, using his flying Raijin to teleport Obito away, leading into the fateful battle that would cost the fourth Hokage his life. But even as Minato sealed the yin half of the Kyuubi into himself and prepared to seal the yang half into Naruto, he realized a terrifying truth. The Reaper Death God itself seemed hesitant to approach the crib. The cosmic deity looked at the baby's eyes, bowed its head in a strange, silent acknowledgement of a higher authority, and took Minato's soul. The next morning, the sun rose over a devastated Konoha. The third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, stood in the wreckage of the birthing cave, holding the orphaned Naruto. The baby was asleep now, his eyes closed. But Hiruzen had seen them. He had seen the ripples and the nine tomer. He remembered the ancient, forbidden scrolls locked deep within the Hokage residence, scrolls that spoke of an ancient goddess who possessed a third eye capable of casting an eternal dream upon the world. Anbu, Hiruzen commanded, his voice cold and heavy with the weight of a leader who had just inherited a god-tier secret. 3 elite Anbu dropped to their knees before him. From this day forth, Uzumaki Naruto's eyes are classified as an SSS rank, absolute maximum security secret of the leaf, Hiruzen declared. When he opens his eyes in public, a special, continuous genjutsu seal must be applied over his face to make them appear standard blue. If anyone, be it civilian, shinobi, or the council, asks about him, he is simply the Jinchuriki. Nothing more. If a single word about his eyes leaks outside this room, the punishment is execution. Am I understood? Quote. Yes, Hokage-sama. The Anbu vanished. Hiruzen looked down at the boy, who was softly breathing. May the heavens protect us, Naruto. For if the world finds out what you truly carry, the fourth great shinobi war will begin before you can even walk. Quote. Years passed, and Naruto grew up in the cold, suffocating isolation of Konoha. The villagers hated him because they knew he held the fox that destroyed their homes. But they didn't know about the eyes. To the public, he was just a loud, clumsy blonde boy with bright blue eyes. But behind the illusionary genjutsu, Naruto knew the truth. Ever since he could remember, he didn't see the world like everyone else. He saw chakra pathways as glowing, brilliant rivers. He could see through solid walls, predict the trajectory of a falling leaf 3 seconds before it detached from the branch, and most importantly, he could hear a voice inside his mind. Deep within his subconscious, the young half of the Nine Tails, Kurama, did not roar at Naruto. He did not thrash against the bars of his cage. Instead, the giant fox sat curled up, staring at the massive, glowing crimson eye that hovered in the sky of Naruto's mindscape, a manifestation of the boy's birthright. To think that I, the great Kurama, would be sealed inside the reincarnation of the ancestor, Kurama grumbled one night, his massive red eyes looking down at an 8-year-old Naruto sitting on the floor of his mindscape. You don't even know how to use 1% of that power, brat, yet your mere presence suppresses my chakra completely. Hey, fuzzy fox, Naruto said, completely unafraid, tilting his head. Why do the villagers look at me with so much anger, but when I look back at them with my real eyes in the mirror, I feel like I could make them all disappear with a single thought. Kurama let out a dark, booming chuckle. Because you can, Naruto. Those eyes aren't meant for a ninja. They are meant for a god. But listen to me carefully. Keep them hidden. There are shadows in this village. One old vulture in particular named Danzo, who would rip those eyes out of your skull the moment they realize what they are. Naruto nodded slowly. He wasn't the hyperactive, dense idiot of the original timeline. The sheer amount of information his brain processed daily due to the Rinne Sharingan had forced his intellect to mature at a frightening speed. He wore the mask of an orange-loving, loud-mouthed prankster to keep the Anbu watching him off guard. It was his own ultimate genjutsu. By the time Naruto turned 12, it was time to graduate from the academy. He purposely failed the clone jutsu multiple times during practice, maintaining his facade as the dead last. However, on the day of the final exam, Mizuki manipulated him into stealing the scroll of seals. Naruto complied, not because he was tricked, but because his eyes had already seen through Mizuki's malicious chakra flow days ago. Naruto wanted that scroll. Deep in the woods, under the moonlight, Naruto unrolled the forbidden scroll. His Rinne Sharingan, freed from the Hokage's hiding genjutsu for the first time in years, spun lazily in the dark. With a single glance, Naruto didn't just read the multi-shadow clone jutsu. His brain instantly memorized, analyzed, and perfected every single forbidden kinjutsu written on the parchment. NT within 3 seconds. The structural breakdown of Hiraishin, Flying Raijin, the mechanics of the Reaper Death Seal, everything became transparent to him. So, you found out, a voice sneered from the trees. Mizuki landed on a branch, holding a giant shuriken, his face twisted in a villainous smirk. Iruka Umino lay injured nearby, having tracked Naruto down to protect him. Naruto. Don't give him the scroll. It contains forbidden jutsu. Iruka coughed up blood, desperately trying to shield his student. Mizuki laughed maniacally. It's over, Iruka. The village has been lying to you, Naruto. Do you want to know why everyone hates you? Why you're treated like filth? Mizuki. Stop. It's a forbidden law, Iruka screamed. 12 years ago, the fourth Hokage didn't kill the nine-tailed fox, he sealed it inside you. You are the demon fox that killed Iruka's parents. Mizuki roared, throwing the massive shuriken straight at Naruto's chest. Naruto, get down. Iruka lunged forward, intending to shield the boy with his own body. But Iruka never made it. And the shuriken never hit. Time seemed to grind to a violent, screeching halt. Naruto stood perfectly still. Slowly, he lifted his head. The blonde bangs parted, and for the first time in 12 years, someone other than the Hokage saw his true eyes. The deep, crimson irises with 3 concentric rings and 9 black tomer gleamed with an ethereal, terrifying light under the full moon. Amanamanaka. Distortion, Naruto whispered. The space directly in front of Naruto warped. The massive iron shuriken didn't just stop. It was instantly swallowed by a micro tear in reality, disappearing into a pocket dimension, completely vanishing from existence. Mizuki's laughter died in his throat. His eyes widened to the size of saucers, his breath catching as an oppressive, suffocating gravity slammed down onto the entire forest. The trees groaned under the weight of an unseen pressure. Iruka froze on the ground, paralyzing fear gripping his soul. He looked at Naruto, but he didn't see a boy. He felt as if he was standing in the presence of a cosmic entity that could crush the Hidden Leaf Village with a blink. You speak of the fox as if it is a monster, Mizuki, Naruto said, his voice entirely devoid of his usual childish cheer. It was calm, chilling, and echoed with a subtle dual-tone resonance. Naruto raised a single hand, pointing his index finger at Mizuki. But you are standing in front of something far worse. A small, black sphere of pure gravitational energy began to form at the tip of Naruto's finger, a miniature version of Chibaku Tensei. The air around Mizuki began to pull violently toward the sphere. What are you? Those aren't the eyes of the fox. What kind of monster are you? Mizuki shrieked, completely losing his mind as his body began to float off the branch against his will. Before Naruto could obliterate Mizuki, a flicker of movement caught his attention. His eyes tracked a chakra signature hiding in the shadows a mile away. It was Hiruzen Sarutobi, watching through his crystal ball, and a squad of Anbu moving in fast. Naruto's eyes narrowed slightly. Not yet, he thought. It's too early to show the Hokage everything. With a subtle blink, the crimson hue faded, replaced instantly by the illusionary bright blue. The crushing gravity vanished, and Mizuki slammed hard against the ground, gasping for air, complete. Broken psychologically. Naruto instantly shifted his posture, rubbing the back of his head and laughing loudly like a goofy kid. He. Take that, Mizuki-sensei. I totally tricked you with my secret jutsu. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. In a massive burst of smoke, 100 solid clones appeared, completely surrounding the terrified, trembling rogue Chunin. Iruka watched the clones beat Mizuki into unconsciousness, but his mind was completely numb. He looked at Naruto, who was now smiling brightly and handing him his forehead protector. Iruka accepted it mechanically, his hands shaking. He knew what he had seen. The blue eyes were a lie. The clumsy boy was a lie. The Hidden Leaf Village wasn't harboring a Jinchuriki. They were harboring a god. Shadows of the Leaf. The morning after the incident in the forest, the Hidden Leaf Village looked exactly the same. Civilians hurried through the bustling streets, merchants shouted out their prices, and the grand stone faces of the Hokage stared down blindly from the monument. But inside the Hokage residence, the atmosphere was suffocating. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat behind his wooden desk, the smoke from his pipe forming dense, gray clouds that hovered like a storm over the room. Standing before him was Iruka Umino. The Chunin instructor was pale, his hands tightly clenched into fists, staring blankly at the floor. Iruka, Hiruzen spoke, his voice carrying the heavy, exhausting weight of his age. Tell me exactly what you saw last night. Iruka swallowed hard, the memory sending a physical shiver down his spine. Hokage-sama. The scroll, Mizuki's attack. Everything went exactly as my official report states. But, the boy. When Mizuki threw the giant shuriken, Naruto didn't dodge. He just looked at it. For a fraction of a second, the genjutsu masking his face shattered. Quote. Hiruzen removed his pipe, his eyes narrowing. And his eyes were blood red. They had ripples, like the legendary Rinnegan, but there were markings, small black crests spinning inside them, Iruka whispered, his voice trembling. The shuriken didn't hit him, sir. The space right in front of him literally opened up like a mouth and swallowed it whole. The pressure, the gravity in that forest. I couldn't breathe. I felt like an ant standing before an absolute god. Quote. Hiruzen sighed deeply, leaning back into his chair. He didn't look surprised, which only made Iruka's heart sink further. So, the seal is weakening as his body grows, Hiruzen muttered to himself. He then looked sharply at Iruka. Yumi no Iruka. What you saw last night is an SSS rank secret. Uzumaki Naruto is not just the container of the Nine Tails. He is something far more dangerous to the global balance of power. If any other nation, or the Uchiha clan, discovers what those eyes are, Konoha will become ground zero for a world war. You will breathe a word of this to no one. Not even your closest friends. I understand, Hokage-sama. Iruka bowed, his loyalty keeping his questions locked away. But, is Naruto safe? As long as he wears the mask, Hiruzen said grimly. Dismissed. As Iruka left, a shadow detached itself from the dark corner of the room. A man with bandages wrapped around half his face and his right arm bound tightly walked forward, his cane clicking rhythmically against the wooden floor. Danzo Shimura, the leader of the underground root organization, had arrived. You are being soft, Hiruzen, Danzo sneered, his lone visible eye gleaming with cold ambition. The boy's optical power is evolving. Space-time manipulation at 12 years old. Without any formal training. He is a weapon that you are leaving completely unchecked. Give him to me. Root will break his spirit, and I will mold him into the ultimate shield for Konoha. Quote. No, Danzo. Hiruzen slammed his hand on the desk, his chakra flaring. Naruto remains under my direct supervision. I will not turn him into a soulless weapon. Then you are a fool, Danzo spat, turning his back. The Uchiha massacre left us with only one loyal Sharingan user, Kakashi, and a child, Sasuke. If the boy's eyes are what the ancient tablets describe, the origin of all visual jutsu, he is too dangerous to be left playing ninja in the streets. If you won't secure him, the shadows will. Meanwhile, in a small, run-down apartment on the edge of the village, Naruto sat cross-legged on his bed. His apartment was messy, with instant ramen cups stacked on the table, but Naruto himself sat perfectly still. Behind his closed eyelids, inside his mindscape, the illusionary blue was gone. Naruto stood over the dark, flooded floor of his subconscious, facing the massive golden cage that held the Kyuubi. The giant fox was resting its massive chin on its paws, its slit-like eyes tracking Naruto's every move. Emmett. The old man is panicking. Brat, Kurama rumbled, his voice echoing through the sewer like pipes. And that one-eyed vulture, Danzo, is already salivating over your skull. You made a mistake showing even a glimpse of that technique. Quote. I had to test it, Naruto replied calmly. His voice inside his mind didn't have the high-pitched scratchiness of a 12-year-old, it was deep and resonated with authority. The nine-tomer in his crimson eyes spun slowly. The technique I used, Amanamanaka. It allows me to rewrite the spatial coordinates of anything within my field of vision. I didn't just destroy the shuriken. I sent it to a dimension filled with nothing but acid. It dissolved instantly. Kurama let out a low, dangerous laugh. That is the power of the mother of chakra. But your mortal body cannot handle frequent use of those dimensions yet. If you try to teleport your entire body there right now, the spatial friction will tear your muscles to shreds. You need more chakra. My chakra. I don't need your hatred. Kurama, Naruto said, walking closer to the bars. I can see the seals on this cage. I can see how your chakra flows. If I wanted to, I could twist these iron bars into dust with my gravity path. But I want a partnership. You want freedom, and I want a source of raw energy that doesn't exhaust my physical cells. The Nine Tails went silent. For millennia, humans had looked at him as a weapon, a monster, or a tool to be controlled via genjutsu. But this boy, this child who possessed the very eyes of the old sage's mother, was looking at him as an equal. HMPH. You speak big words for a rookie. Naruto, Kurama grunted, though the malicious red aura around him softened significantly. We'll see if your body survives the coming weeks. Danzo's crows are already circling your apartment. 2 days later, Naruto was walking through the training grounds, casually tossing a kunai into the air and catching it, acting like his usual loud, clumsy self. His Rinne Sharingan was locked beneath the Hokage's genjutsu, showing only standard blue eyes. Suddenly, the ambient temperature dropped. The rustling of the leaves stopped. Naruto's sensory perception, enhanced tenfold by his birthright, picked up 4 distinct chakra signatures closing in on him. From the blind spots of the trees. They weren't standard Anbu. Their chakra was cold, suppressed, and smelled of killing intent. Root operatives. Uzumaki Naruto. A voice echoed from the shadows as 4 masked ninja in gray armor landed in a perfect square formation around him, sealing off all escape routes. By order of the higher authorities, you are to accompany us to the underground facility for administrative evaluation. Do not resist. Naruto blinked, putting on a terrified, trembling expression. Who are you guys? I'm supposed to meet my academy class today. Old man Hokage will be mad if I'm late. The Hokage has no jurisdiction here, the lead root operative said coldly, drawing a wakizashi, short sword. Subdue him. 2 operatives lunged forward, their movements blindingly fast for an average genin. They aimed for Naruto's pressure points, intending to paralyze him instantly. But to Naruto, their movements were agonizingly slow. Every muscle twitch, every shift in their weight, and the exact flow of chakra to their feet was completely exposed to his eyes. Let's try a different path today, Naruto thought. As the blades were inches from his skin, Naruto didn't dodge. Instead, he activated a fraction of the Rinne Sharingan's secondary power, the Diva Path, gravity control. Shinra Tensei, almighty push, Naruto muttered under his breath, keeping his voice below a whisper. An invisible, violent shockwave of gravitational force erupted outward from Naruto's body in a perfect sphere. The ground beneath his feet shattered, dirt and rocks flying into the air. The 2 attacking root ninja didn't even realize what happened before the invisible wall slammed into their chest. With the force of a speeding iron train. Crack. The sound of breaking ribs echoed through the clearing as both operatives were launched backward, crashing through 3 thick oak trees before collapsing into unconsciousness, blood pooling under their masks. The remaining 2 root ninja froze, their training momentarily failing them against the sheer absurdity of what they had just witnessed. A 12-year-old academy failure had just blown away 2 elite Chunin-level operatives without moving a single finger or forming a single hand seal. What kind of barrier jutsu is that? The leader shouted, his composure shattering. Use the sealing tags. Quickly. The 2 operatives threw dozens of exploding tags and sealing seals, creating a storm of paper that rushed toward Naruto, intending to bind his chakra. Naruto stood in the center of the crater, his expression transitioning from the goofy boy to a cold, emotionless sovereign. The genjutsu on his face flickered violently under the stress of his chakra, revealing the glowing crimson rings and the 9-tomer to the remaining 2 ninja. You wanted to evaluate me? Naruto asked, his dual-toned voice sending a wave of absolute dread through the forest. He extended both hands to his sides. Bansho Tenon, universal pull. The gravitational vector completely reversed. The exploding tags flew away, and the two root ninja were violently jerked off their feet, pulled through the air straight toward Naruto's outstretched hands like iron filings to a massive magnet. Naruto caught both of them by their throats. The sheer physical strength, backed by the passive amplification of his eyes, held them completely helpless. Tell Danzo, Naruto whispered, his crimson Rinne Sharingan spinning lazily as he stared directly into the eyes of the terrified lead operative, instantly trapping him in a crushing visual illusion that made him feel like his soul was being burnt alive. If he sends his dogs into my sight again, I won't just destroy the dogs. I will pull his underground fortress right out of the earth and bury him under it. Quote. With a casual toss, Naruto threw them to the ground. They lay there, paralyzed by fear and psychological trauma, unable to move. Naruto closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he opened them again, they were bright blue once more. He adjusted his orange jacket, picked up his fallen kunai, and started walking toward the academy with a wide, cheerful grin. Man, those weird guys sure were weird. Naruto shouted to the empty forest, knowing the Hokage's hidden watcher was likely observing from afar. I gotta hurry or I'll miss team assignments. As he walked away, deep inside his mindscape, Kurama was laughing hysterically. Oh, this is going to be an entertaining era. Show them, Naruto. Show them what happens when mortals try to cage a god. Quote. The academic paradox. The academy graduation classroom was loud, chaotic, and filled with the nervous energy of newly minted genin. For most, today was the beginning of their ninja way. But for Naruto, walking through those doors meant putting his mask back on. The clumsy, loud-mouthed idiot at the village felt safe around. As Naruto entered, throwing his arms behind his head and grinning broadly, the room fell into its usual rhythm of sighs and whispers. How did the dead last even graduate? Shikamaru muttered, resting his head on his desk. Hey, I'm gonna be the Hokage, ya know. Naruto yelled back, jumping onto the desk directly in front of Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke didn't even look up. He sat with his fingers interlocked, his face a mask of brooding Uchiha superiority. To Sasuke, Naruto was a joke, a noisy obstacle in his path to gaining power for his vengeance against Itachi. But behind Naruto's bright blue illusionary eyes, his true vision was actively dissecting the Uchiha sitting before him. With his Rinne Sharingan's passive perception, Naruto didn't just see Sasuke. He saw the residual, dark Uchiha chakra coiled tight within Sasuke's nervous system like a sleeping viper. He saw the potential for the Sharingan dormant in the boy's optic nerves. So small, Naruto thought, a cold, clinical analysis running through his mind. His chakra network is choked by anger. If he awakens the Sharingan now, it will only burn him from the inside out. Suddenly, the door flew open, and Sakura and Ino charged into the room, gasping for breath, arguing Veer who got to sit next to Sasuke. When Sakura noticed Naruto sitting right on Sasuke's desk, she growled, Naruto. Get away from Sasuke-kun. Naruto leaned forward, his face inches from Sasuke's, mocking him. What's so great about this guy anyway? Sasuke's eyes snapped up, glaring back. For a split second, their gazes locked. In that microscopic moment, the sheer force of Naruto's latent, suppressed Rinne Sharingan chakra leaked through the Hokage's Genjutsu seal. It wasn't visible to the naked eye, but to the genetic lineage of the Uchiha, it was a seismic shockwave. Sasuke's breath caught in his throat. His heart skipped a violent beat. For a terrifying millisecond, his vision didn't see Naruto's blue eyes. He saw a vast, bloody crimson sky filled with concentric ripples and giant, spinning Tomo staring down at him like the eye of an ancient god. A heavy, ice-cold sweat broke out across Sasuke's forehead. His Sharingan, which hadn't even fully awakened yet, violently pulsed within his eyes, begging to surface just to protect his psyche from the Shi-R pressure. Hey, what's wrong, Sasuke? You look like you saw a ghost. Naruto laughed, breaking the gaze and hopping off the desk as Iruka-sensei walked into the classroom. Sasuke slumped back, his chest heaving silently, his hands trembling hidden beneath the desk. What? What was that? His mind screamed in sheer panic. That wasn't Naruto. That pressure. It felt like looking at death itself. Next, Team 7, Iruka announced, reading from his scroll. Uzumaki Naruto, Haruno Sakura. Quote. Sakura cheered, while Naruto feigned a dramatic groan. And Uchiha Sasuke. Now it was Naruto's turn to fake a celebratory cheer while Sakura deflated. But Sasuke didn't make a sound. His dark eyes were glued to the back of Naruto's head, his analytical Uchiha mind frantically trying to rationalize the anomaly he had felt just moments ago. Hours later, the rest of the teams had left with their respective Jonin-sensei. Team 7 was left alone in the empty classroom. Naruto, playing his part to perfection, was busy wedging a chalkboard eraser into the sliding frame of the door. Naruto. A Jonin isn't going to fall for a stupid prank like that. Sakura scolded, though internally she was just annoyed by their teacher's extreme lateness. Sasuke scoffed. He's an elite ninja. There's no way. Slid. The door opened, and a hand caught the eraser smoothly before it could fall. A tall man with gravity-defying silver hair, a mask covering his lower face, and his leaf headband pulled down over his left eye stepped into the room. Hatake Kakashi had arrived. How do I put this? Kakashi muttered, rubbing his chin as he looked at the three genin. My first impression of you guys, you're a bunch of idiots. On the rooftop of the academy, the fresh breeze did little to ease the underlying tension. Kakashi leaned against the railing, his visible eye scanning his new squad. Alright, let's introduce ourselves, Kakashi said lazily. Tell me your likes, dislikes, dreams for the future, and hobbies. Quote. Sakura went first, talking entirely about her obsession with Sasuke. Sasuke went next, his voice cold and filled with a dark promise of killing a certain someone, and restoring his clan. When it was Naruto's turn, he pumped his fist in the air. I'm Uzumaki Naruto. I like instant ramen, especially the cup kind, and I hate waiting for the water to boil. My dream is to become the greatest Hokage so the whole village acknowledges me. Kakashi smiled beneath his mask, but internally, his mind was racing. He was one of the very few elite ninja who knew a fraction of the truth. Lord Third had personally debriefed him the previous night. Kakashi, the Hokage's voice echoed in his memory. Naruto's eyes are evolving past the seal. If he loses control, or if his emotions flare, the visual prowess he possesses can rewrite reality. Watch him. Do not let him use his true eyes unless it is a matter of absolute life and death. Kakashi shifted his gaze to Naruto's bright blue eyes. To think the kid is hiding a power that makes my copied Sharingan look like a toy. Let's see what he's made of. Alright, tomorrow we start our first real test, Kakashi announced, slipping his hands into his pockets. A survival drill. And out of the three of you, at least two will fail and be sent back to the academy. Sakura gasped, and even Sasuke narrowed his eyes. Bring your ninja gear and meet at Training Ground 3 at 5 a.m., Kakashi smiled eye-crinklingly. Oh, and a word of advice, don't eat breakfast. You'll throw up. As Kakashi vanished in a swirl of leaves, Naruto stood up, stretching his arms. Well, I'm gonna go get some ramen. See ya tomorrow, Sasuke, Sakura-chan. Quote. As Naruto walked away, Sasuke stood up abruptly, his voice cutting through the clearing. Naruto. Naruto stopped, turning back with a goofy expression. Yeah. Sasuke walked up to him, stopping just a foot away, his dark eyes burning with an intense, desperate curiosity. In the classroom today, when you looked at me, what did you do? Sakura looked between them, confused. What are you talking about, Sasuke-kun? Naruto blinked blankly, scratching his nose. Huh, what do you mean? I was just looking at your ugly mug because you were ignoring me. Are you crazy, Sasuke? Sasuke stared deeply into Naruto's blue eyes, searching for a twitch, a lie, a hint of that cosmic terror he had felt earlier. But there was nothing. Just the empty, cheerful gaze of the dead last. Forget it. Sasuke spat, turning around and walking away, his fists clenched tightly. I know what I felt. You're hiding something, Naruto. And I will beat it out of you tomorrow. Walking down the stairs of the academy, Naruto's smile slowly faded into a thin, razor-sharp line. Deep within his mindscape, Kurama let out a massive yawn. The Uchiha brat is sharp, Naruto. His bloodline sensed the presence of the Prime Eye. Tomorrow during this survival drill, your sensei is going to push you. What's the plan? Naruto looked up at the massive crimson eye hovering over Kurama's cage, its 9-tomer spinning in perfect sync with Hai's own. Let them push. Naruto thought back, a dangerous, quiet confidence radiating from his soul. I'll give Kakashi exactly what he wants to see, a perfect genin teamwork display. But if they try to look too deep into the abyss, I'll let the abyss look back. Team 7 and the True Awakening. The morning mist clung heavily to Training Ground 3. The air was cold, and the sound of crickets slowly died out as the sun broke through the canopy. Sasuke and Sakura stood shivering, their stomachs groaning from hunger. Naruto, true to his persona, was leaning against a wooden post, loudly complaining about Kakashi's lateness while secretly running complex chakra calculations in his head. When Kakashi finally materialized in a swirl of leaves, holding his signature orange book, Naruto exploded into a well-rehearsed tantrum. You're late, Kakashi-sensei. Naruto and Sakura yelled in unison. Ah, sorry. A black cat crossed my path, so I had to take the long way around, Kakashi said smoothly, placing an alarm clock on top of a wooden stump. He set it for noon. Next, he pulled out 2 silver bells, which jingled softly in the morning air. Your task is simple. You have until noon to take these bells from me. Those who don't get a bell will be tied to these posts and watch me eat my lunch. Oh, and you'll also fail and be sent back to the academy. Quote. Sakura gasped. Wait, there are only 2 bells, but there are 3 of us. Exactly. Kakashi smiled. Which means at least one of you will definitely fail. You can use any weapon, including kunai and shuriken. Come at me with the intent to kill, or you won't stand a chance. Sasuke's eyes narrowed, his hand drifting toward his shuriken holster. When I say start, begin. In a flash, Sasuke and Sakura vanished into the surrounding brush, hiding their chakra perfectly like textbook shinobi. Naruto, however, remained standing right in the middle of the clearing, his hands on his hips. You and me, right here, right now, sensei. Naruto yelled, pointing a finger at the elite Jonin. Kakashi sighed, flipping open his book. You know, compared to the other 2, you really are a bit strange, Naruto. Naruto charged forward, swinging a wild, clumsy right hook. Kakashi easily crouched underneath it, slipping behind Naruto to form the Tiger Hand seal. Too slow. Leaf Village Secret Finger Master. 1,000 years of death. But before Kakashi's fingers could connect with Naruto's backside, the Naruto in front of him dissolved into a puddle of water. A water clone. Kakashi's single visible eye widened slightly. A water clone. When did he perform the hand seals? I didn't see him mold chakra. Suddenly, the ground beneath Kakashi exploded. 4 Narutos burst out of the dirt, grabbing Kakashi's arms and legs to pin him down, while a 5th Naruto dropped from the sky, a kunai aimed squarely at Kakashi's chest. Inside his mindscape, Kurama chuckled. Using the earth release to burrow while leaving a water clone as a decoy. Not bad for a brat pretending to be an idiot. Quote, "It's all about calculated misdirection," Naruto replied internally. Kakashi, using his immense speed, substituted himself with a log just before the kunai struck. He reappeared on a nearby tree branch, his book closed now. He looked down at Naruto with a newfound seriousness. His physical stats and execution are far above what the Academy records indicated. He's deliberately suppressing his true capabilities. Before the test could continue, a flurry of shuriken and kunai flew from the bushes, forcing Kakashi to leap off the branch. Sasuke emerged from the shadows, launching into a fierce hand-to-hand combat sequence with the Jonin. The Uchiha's movements were sharp, aggressive, and filled with pride. But Kakashi's experience was too vast. Within minutes, Sasuke was trapped, buried up to his neck in the earth via earth release, headhunter jutsu. Sakura, having stumbled into a basic genjutsu earlier, lay unconscious a few yards away. The alarm clock blared. It was noon. An hour later, Sasuke and Sakura were tied to the wooden posts, their faces pale with exhaustion and hunger. Naruto sat on the grass in front of them, looking entirely unbothered. Kakashi stood before them, his arms crossed, an oppressive aura radiating from his body. "I've decided," Kakashi said coldly. "None of you will be sent back to the academy." Sakura's face lit up. "Really? Then that means we pass." "No," Kakashi snapped. "It means all three of you are being dropped from the shinobi program entirely. You aren't ninjas. You're just bratty kids who don't understand what it means to be a squad." Sasuke gritted his teeth, struggling against his ropes. "What did you say? You don't understand the fundamental rule of this test." "Teamwork," Kakashi yelled, his voice echoing through the training grove. "ND. Sakura, you focused entirely on Sasuke while Naruto was right in front of you. Sasuke, you assumed Naruto would only get in your way and tried to do everything alone. And Naruto, you did everything through decoys without relying on your teammates." Quote. Kakashi walked over to the bento boxes sitting on the stump. "I'm going to give you one last chance. I will eat my lunch, and then we will resume this afternoon. Naruto, Sasuke, you two may eat. But do not give any food to Sakura. If you feed her, you fail instantly. Those are the rules." With a flash, Kakashi vanished into thin air. The clearing fell into a tense, heavy silence. The smell of the fresh food drifted toward Sakura, whose stomach let out a loud, pathetic rumble. She hung her head, trying to hide her tears. Sasuke looked at his bento, then at Sakura. He kicked his box toward her. "Take it. If you're starving, you'll just be dead weight this afternoon. We need to work together to take those bells." Quote. Sakura looked up in surprise. "But Sasuke-kun," Kakashi-sensei said. "Forget what he said," Naruto interrupted. He picked up his own chopsticks, scooped up a giant portion of rice and meat, and held it right in front of Sakura's face. His usual loud grin was gone, replaced by a calm, firm expression. "Eat up, Sakura-chan. A squad doesn't let one of their own starve just because some scarecrow told them to." "Naruto," Sakura whispered, tears finally leaking from her eyes as she accepted the food. Instantly, the sky darkened. A violent storm of wind kicked up, bending the trees as Kakashi materialized out of a massive burst of smoke, his face twisted into a terrifying, demonic expression. "You!" Kakashi roared, his hand reaching for his covered eye. "You dared to defy my direct orders. Do you have any idea what the consequences are?" Sasuke braced himself, and Sakura shrieked in fear. But Naruto didn't blink. He slowly stood up, stepping directly between Kakashi and his tied-up teammates. For a fraction of a second, the sheer, crushing pressure of Kakashi's Jonin-level killing intent triggered a violent defense mechanism deep within Naruto's chakra network. The Hokage's illusionary genjutsu seal on Naruto's face violently fractured. The bright blue eyes vanished. What replaced them made Kakashi's heart completely freeze. 3 concentric rings of deepest crimson, holding 9 pitch black, spinning tomo, flared to life in the dim light of the artifact. IAL storm. The air pressure in Training Ground 3 plummeted to absolute zero. The wind Kakashi had conjured didn't just stop. It violently imploded, dying instantly under the weight of a gravity so intense that the grass around Naruto's feet flattened into dust. Kakashi stumbled back a step, his hand shaking over his headband. His own Sharingan, hidden beneath the fabric, was spinning so rapidly it was causing him physical pain, completely paralyzed by the evolutionary majesty of the eyes before him. This is the eye of the Jubi, the Rinne Sharingan, Kakashi's mind screamed, his breath catching in his throat. The pressure. I can't move. If he blinks, he could wipe this entire training ground off the map. Single quote. Sasuke, tied to the post behind Naruto, felt the residual aura. His bloodline screamed in absolute terror. He couldn't see Naruto's face, but the silhouette of his teammate looked less like a boy and more like a colossal, multi-eyed demon towering into the heavens. Naruto stared at Kakashi, his voice dropping into that chilling, dual-toned resonance that belonged to a deity. In the shinobi world, those who break the rules are scum, Naruto said, his Rinne Sharingan reflecting the pale light. But those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. Is that the answer you wanted, sensei? Kakashi swallowed the lump of terror in his throat. He forced his muscles to relax, realizing the boy wasn't attacking, he was just stating his terms. With a monumental effort of will, Kakashi smiled eye-crinklingly, breaking the tension. You pass. As soon as the words left Kakashi's mouth, Naruto took a deep breath. The crimson rings receded, and the bright, harmless blue returned as if nothing had ever happened. The crushing gravity vanished, leaving Kakashi drenched in cold sweat. He. I knew it. Naruto shouted, jumping up and down like a hyperactive kid. We're a real team now, ya know. Sakura cheered, and Sasuke let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding, his eyes locked onto Naruto's back. With a mixture of intense fear and a burning desire to know the truth. Kakashi adjusted his mask, his hands still trembling slightly as he untied Sasuke and Sakura. Lord Third was wrong, Kakashi thought grimly. The seal isn't weakening. The boy has already mastered the basic weight of those eyes. He's just choosing when to let us see it. All right, Team 7, Kakashi said, forcing his voice to remain steady. Tomorrow, we start our first official D-rank missions. Get some rest. You're going to need it. The Demon of the Mist and the Final Veil. The transition from boring D-rank missions, like weeding gardens and chasing Tora the cat, to their first real C-rank mission happened faster than Team 7 expected. Tazuna, a grumpy master bridge builder from the Land of Waves, had lied about the mission's true danger to afford Konoha's protection. They weren't just escorting an old man. They were walking directly into a war zone controlled by Gato, a ruthless shipping magnate who used rogue ninja to enforce his tyranny. The reality of the mission shattered the moment they hit the road outside the village. 2 rogue Chunin from the Hidden Mist, the Demon Brothers, burst from a puddle, instantly shredding Kakashi into bloody pieces with their chain-bladed gauntlets. Kakashi-sensei! Sakura screamed, paralyzing fear freezing her blood. The brothers didn't stop. One lunged toward Tazuna, while the other flew straight at Naruto. First one down. Now for the brat. Sasuke reacted flawlessly. He launched a shuriken and a kunai, pinning the chain to a tree, then used the pinned chain to vault over the enemy, kicking both brothers violently in the face. It was a textbook Uchiha display. But as the second brother recovered and charged toward Naruto with bloodlust in his eyes, Naruto just stood there. To Sakura and Sasuke, it looked like Naruto was frozen in fear. In reality, Naruto's mind was moving at the speed of light. Behind his blue genjutsu mask, his Rinne Sharingan was tracking the trajectory of the enemy's blade down to the millimeter. Too predictable, Naruto thought. Before Sasuke could step in to steal the spotlight, Naruto lifted his left hand. He didn't form a seal. He didn't draw a kunai. He merely extended his palm toward the charging mist ninja. Shinra Tensei, Naruto muttered in a whisper that died in the wind. An invisible, localized barrier of absolute gravitational repulsion erupted from his palm. The rogue ninja didn't even comprehend what hit him. It felt as if a solid mountain had violently smashed into his skull. The force shattered his iron gauntlet into splinters, and he was thrown backward 50 feet, plowing through the dirt before knocking himself out cold against a boulder. A second later, Kakashi reappeared in a burst of smoke, having used a substitution jutsu to test his students. He looked at the unconscious ninja, then at Naruto, who was immediately rubbing the back of his head and faking a terrified scream. Wah! Sasuke, did you see that? He just flew away. That was so scary, ya know. Naruto yelled, jumping up and down. Sasuke landed on the ground, his eyes wide as he stared at the crater in front of Naruto. No. That wasn't my kick that did that. Naruto didn't even move. What is this freak hiding? Kakashi's eye narrowed behind his mask. He controlled the output perfectly so that only the enemy felt the kinetic impact, leaving the surrounding grass untouched. His mastery over the Diva path is becoming frighteningly precise. Days later, the team arrived in the Land of Waves, a place shrouded in a thick, unnatural fog. The atmosphere was heavy with the scent of sea salt and death. As they walked along a narrow dirt path surrounded by dense forest, the fog suddenly grew so thick that they could barely see their own hands. Stand back, Kakashi suddenly ordered, his hand flying to his headband, uncovering his Sharingan. He's here. A massive, heavy cleaver-like sword, the Kubikiribocho, came spinning through the fog like a lethal windmill. Team 7 ducked just in time as the giant blade embedded itself deeply into the trunk of a massive tree. A man materialized, standing effortlessly on the handle of the sword. He was wrapped in bandages, shirtless, with cold, ruthless eyes. Zabuza Momochi, the demon of the hidden mist. Well, if it isn't Hatake Kakashi, the copy ninja of the leaf, Zabuza rasped, his voice dripping with pure kill. Ling intent. Hand over the bridge builder, and I might let these kids live. The sheer weight of Zabuza's bloodlust slammed into the genin. Sakura fell to her knees, gasping for air. Sasuke's hands shook violently. The terrifying pressure was making him contemplate driving a kunai into his own chest just to escape the agonizing tension. But Naruto stood perfectly still. Inside his mindscape, Kurama was pacing back and forth behind the bars, his massive tails whipping the water. This insect thinks his killing intent is impressive, Kurama sneered, his booming voice echoing with dark amusement. Shall we show him what real terror feels like, Naruto? No. Naruto responded calmly, his inner voice echoing with divine authority. Kakashi needs to fight him first. I need to observe how a true mist assassin manipulates the terrain. But if things go south, I will end it. The battle erupted with terrifying speed. Kakashi and Zabuza clashed using high-level water release jutsu. Dragons made of water crashed against each other, shattering the landscape. But Zabuza was a master of the silent killing technique. Utilizing the thick fog, he managed to outmaneuver Kakashi, catching the elite Jonin off guard and trapping him inside a dense sphere of heavy, pressurized water. Water prison jutsu. Zabuza laughed darkly, keeping one hand submerged in the sphere to maintain the seal. It's over, Kakashi. You're trapped. Now, My water clones will slaughter your precious students. Quote. A massive splash echoed through the fog as a solid water clone of Zabuza materialized in front of Team 7, holding a duplicate of the giant executioner's blade. You kids think you're playing ninja. The water clone sneered, dragging the heavy blade along the dirt, creating a horrifying screeching G sound. When you've hovered between life and death as many times as I have, then you can call yourselves ninja. To me, you are just insects. Sasuke gritted his teeth, his Uchiha pride forcing his trembling legs forward. Sakura. Protect Tazuna. Naruto. If you're going to freeze, stay out of my way. Sasuke charged the clone, launching into a desperate combination of shuriken play and hand-to-hand combat. But the physical disparity was too vast. Zabuza's clone effortlessly deflected every attack, grabbed Sasuke by the throat, and slammed him hard into the dirt, stepping heavily onto his chest. Sasuke-kun. Sakura screamed in despair. The Zabuza clone looked over at Naruto, who was standing completely still, his eyes hidden beneath the shadow of his blonde bangs. And now for the noisy loudmouth. Kakashi, trapped inside the water prison, slammed his fists against the walls. Naruto. Sasuke. Take Tazuna and run. You cannot fight a hidden mist demon. This mission is over. Run. The Zabuza clone laughed, raising his massive sword over Sasuke's chest. They aren't going anywhere. Slowly, Naruto took a step forward. The moment his foot touched the ground, the entire world went completely silent. The sound of the crashing waves died. The wind stopped blowing. Naruto raised his head. The blonde bangs parted, and for the first time in this mission, the Hokage's masking genjutsu didn't just fracture, Naruto shattered it completely. The bright blue eyes were gone. In their place burned the terrifying, ancient majesty of the Rinne Sharingan. 3 blood-red concentric rings holding 9 pitch-black tomo spun with a blinding, ethereal luminescence. The ambient chakra in the atmosphere didn't just flare, it violently compressed. A wave of absolute, unadulterated cosmic dread cascaded over the entire battlefield. Zabuza's water clone instantly froze, the water making up its body beginning to vibrate violently and lose its cohesion. The real Zabuza, maintaining the prison a few yards away, felt a sudden, agonizing stab of pain in his chest. His heart hammered wildly against his ribs as a primordial instinct, the instinct of a prey facing a predator from the dawn of time, screamed at him to flee. What is this chakra? Zabuza's mind screamed, cold sweat washing over his face under his bandages. This isn't the 9 tails. This chakra feels ancient. Like the world itself is trying to crush me. Single quote. Sasuke, lying beneath the clone's foot, looked up. From his position on the ground, he saw Naruto's true eyes. His Uchiha blood boiled, his brain cells violently firing as the sheer visual shockwave of seeing the ultimate evolution of optical power forced his own DNA to respond. Twitch. Twitch. In that single second of pure terror and awe, Sasuke's eyes snapped from black to a vivid red, holding a single, newly awakened tomo in each eye. But even with his newly awakened Sharingan, looking at Naruto's eyes felt like looking directly into a blinding, thermonuclear sun. You talk about demons as if you understand them, Zabuza, Naruto said. His voice didn't belong to a 12-year-old boy anymore. It was deep, terrifyingly calm, and echoed with a heavy, dual-toned resonance that shook the very bones of everyone present. Naruto didn't draw a weapon. He simply focused his left eye on the water clone holding Sasuke. Amanamanaka. Spatial disassembly. The space directly around the Zabuza clone violently twisted into a miniature vortex. Before the clone could even scream, the spatial coordinates defining its physical form were completely rewritten. The space shattered like a broken mirror, and the water clone was instantly torn apart on a molecular level, its water splashing harmlessly to the ground as the pocket dimension closed. Without pausing for a single breath, Naruto turned his crimson gaze toward the real Zabuza, who was still holding Kakashi in the water prison. Next is the real one, Naruto whispered. He raised his right hand, pulling his fingers back into a claw-like gesture. Bansho Tenon. An irresistible, colossal gravitational pull locked onto Zabuza's body. The force was so immense that it violently ripped Zabuza away from the water prison, breaking his technique instantly. Zabuza screamed as his body flew helplessly through the air, traveling at supersonic speeds straight toward Naruto's outstretched hand. Kakashi fell out of the collapsing water prison, coughing up water, his single Sharingan wide with absolute, paralyzed disbelief. He didn't just use gravity. He used space-time manipulation to erase a clone while simultaneously executing a perfect kinetic pull. His power. It's completely unsealable now. Naruto caught the flying Zabuza by his throat, his small hand locking around the giant man's neck with the unyielding strength of a titanium vice. The weight of Naruto's Rinne Sharingan chakra slammed directly into Zabuza's nervous system, completely paralyzing his chakra flow and leaving him gasping like a fish out of water. Who? What? Are you? Zabuza choked out, his eyes wide with a psychological terror he had never felt in his entire life as a killer. Looking into Naruto's crimson rings, he felt as if his very soul was being weighed and found entirely worthless. Naruto stared into the assassin's eyes, his expression cold, detached, and devoid of any human emotion, the look of a god deciding the fate of a mortal. I am the ending of your story, Naruto said softly. Before Naruto could close his fist to crush Zabuza's throat, two hidden Senbon needles flew through the fog, aiming precisely at Zabuza's neck pressure points. A masked figure wearing a hidden mist hunter nin mask dropped from the trees, landing gracefully on a nearby branch. Haku had arrived to save his master. Please, drop your hand, Haku's voice echoed through the mask, though it trembled slightly under the residual pressure of Naruto's aura. I am a hunter nin from the mist. My duty is to dispose of this rogue. Naruto didn't turn his head to look at Haku. His crimson Rinne Sharingan merely shifted slightly to the side, locking onto the masked boy. With that single, icy glance, Haku felt an invisible weight slam into his chest, forcing him down to one knee on the bran. The wood beneath him cracking under the sudden gravitational spike. You hide behind a mask to protect someone you love, Naruto said, his voice echoing through the silent fog. A commendable trait. But do not mistake my patience for weakness. Naruto casually tossed the paralyzed Zabuza toward Haku's feet like a piece of discarded trash. Take him. Run. Tell your master Gato that the land of waves is now under the protection of someone who can erase his existence with a blink. If you return to this bridge, I will not use gravity. I will let you experience the absolute void. Haku, shaking under the pressure, quickly grabbed the unconscious Zabuza, bowed deeply in an instinctual show of absolute submission to a higher power, and vanished into the fog in a swirl of leaves. The heavy, suffocating pressure slowly lifted from the forest. The fog began to thin, and the natural sounds of the ocean returned. Naruto closed his eyes, took a deep, steadying breath, and when he opened them again, the brilliant, harmless blue eyes returned. He immediately collapsed onto his butt, rubbing the back of his head and laughing loudly like a goofy kid. Wow, that masked guy sure was scary. Did you see how fast he took that big sword guy away? We totally won, ya know. He. Naruto cheered, acting completely oblivious to the absolute chaos he had just caused. But the silence that followed his laughter was deafening. Sakura was staring at Naruto as if he were an alien entity, her mouth catching the air. Sasuke stood up slowly, his newly awakened Sharingan fading back to black. His hands were clenched so tightly that his nails drew blood. He didn't care about Zabuza. He didn't care about the mission. His entire world had just been shattered. The Dead last, he had despised was carrying a visual prowess that made the legendary Uchiha lineage look like a mere shadow in the dark. Kakashi walked over slowly, his uniform drenched in water, his visible eye looking at his blonde student with a mixture of profound awe, fear, and a deep, unsettling realization. The Hidden Leaf Village thought they were hiding a weapon to protect their borders. But as Kakashi looked at Naruto's wide, fake smile, he knew the truth. The seal was entirely gone. Naruto wasn't hiding from the world anymore. He was just waiting for the world to give him a reason to open his eyes. End of part -1.